se avesse fatta nada quella che ha fatto a me, sto modo avesse accisa e vuoi sapere perché.
I'm here to tell what I call a Jersey tale about what went on years ago in what I'm now referring to as unorganized crime. It was all kinds of illegal activity and a lifestyle that existed that would never exist now. The reason I call it "Shut Up When You Talk to Me" is my ex-husband, who was born in Italy, when we used to fight, he used to say to me, "Brendina," my name is Brenda, of course, "shut up when you talk to me." And I used to say, "How do you do that? What does that mean?" It means don't talk. So I'm saying, "Shut up when you talk to me," meaning don't talk, because the things that we're talking about are things that people normally don't say on camera. So I'm here to say that the things that went on back then, the lifestyle that existed, the way people lived, which was all illegal, of course, would never be able to exist now because of what I say I'm technologically challenged. The computer internet world makes it impossible to do things and not be exposed and not be caught, like with something that, like, in other words, you're trying to hide or whatever. You can never hide things now like you did back then. My father is here. His name is James Monty. And my father is one of the few people, first of all, most of the guys his age are dead anyway. And if they're not dead, the ones that were involved in what he was involved in spent their final years in jail because they had to get arrested in their older years for what went on and what they got away with their whole life up until that point. So they're paying for it later when they're older and they probably have dead in jail, but they lived a good life when they were younger, when they were getting away with all this illegal activity. So I'm going to start with, before my father tells you his story, because he's a living dinosaur.
Living legend.
Yeah, living dinosaur.
In my own mind.
What we're calling Last of the Sopranos, that he knew what was really going on, and he's smart enough, unlike most of them, because, like my ex-husband, he was born in Italy, and he used to say, "Give me three of them. Hey, give me three." And I said, "Why do you say tree? You know there's an H in that word. It's three. Say three." But he was such a Guido, and Guidos, they think that it's tough to say things like, "Hey, yo, give me three." And it's just uneducated. It's just, kind of illiterate. My father is not a typical Italian Guido. He's cerebral. He's smart. He remembers things. He's still got all his marbles, which is odd for a man his age. And he could give you a really realistic account of things that went on and tell the real facts. It's all factual. It's all real. We're not making anything up. I don't even know how to make anything up. So just to give you a little background, it's I call the episode, which refers to my personal experience in my childhood of with my father and things that went on, Mala Femina, because Mala Femina is a hit by an artist called Jimmy Roselli, who was a singer back in the 60s, right?
70s. More 70s.
70s, that my mother used to go to see for years. Looking back as an adult now, I would say probably she might have been fooling around with him a little bit back then, you think?
That's a stupid question. She might have been fooling around with everybody and anybody. I don't know. She did what she wanted to do. I come home one day, I said to you, "Where's your mother?" You said, "In Florida."
Really?
I guess she's not going to be here for dinner. But you knew exactly where she was.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Well, I mean, she didn't give any explanation for the things she did.
No, she felt she didn't have to.
She pretty much just
Well, she wanted to.
took off if she felt like it and said, "Yeah, well, I'll call you when I'm ready to come back," or whatever. But just to explain why it was the way it was, my mother's family came from Italy, and of course we're talking about now with her parents. We're talking about maybe 30s, I guess. And he built a house in Jersey City on Wright Avenue. It was called. It was 3 lots, and it was a big brick structure that had a first floor, which had a big, enormous brick oven for brick oven bread. I mean, that was, their livelihood. And the thing I remember about it is back in the days when there was times where there was no money and the economy was bad, the two things that would always make money, other than a mortician, which is one because people are always going to die and you always have to bury them. Italian bread was one because they fill up on bread. It's the cheapest form of nourishment or whatever that is not junk. Like years ago, they didn't have Burger King and Coors and McDonald's, but Italian bread filled you up, and you could. Italian people call it dunking, so you can make pasta. And if you had 10 kids, my mother was the youngest of 10, and you had to feed all those people. The cheapest way to do it was with Italian bread. So they always made money, but there was 10 kids altogether. The older ones were 20 years older than, like, say, my mother, who was the youngest. So
10 years apart.
Yeah,
I think they were 10
20,
years.
20.
20 years
We're
apart.
20 years
Yeah,
apart.
you're right.
I
20
remember
years
that
apart.
he was old enough to be her father, Uncle Pete, the oldest
Yes,
one, and
that's
she was the
true, that's
youngest. So
true.
he was the first, and she was the 10th. So that 10-year span of
20 years.
10 kids was a 20-year age difference. So she used to, when, like we said in our other one, when we said triple cross, she used to play one brother against the other, and the sister was Pete, Laura, Louis, Tommy,
Anthony,
Tommy was one of
Herky.
the older ones. So she would say, "Oh, Pete wouldn't let me do this. Oh, I'll take you. Come and live with me. I'll take care of you."
Well, there was never a time, there was never a time that I know of, in 20 years I was with her, that they all talked to each other.
Yeah.
That never happened.
Yeah, they were always.
Somebody was always at odds with the other one.
Yeah, and they betrayed. My mother didn't know loyalty. She I guess she didn't know how to spell that word. She didn't know how to spell too many words
that
anyway.
was not in her vocabulary and not in her head.
No, she just was a opportunist in the sense that whatever served her purpose that day, minute to minute. I guess that's part of why I live the way I do, minute to minute, which is not smart,
good,
but
no.
it's just that's why you live so haphazardly, because you don't plan anything. I wish I did plan things, but I never learned how to do that. My mother taught me how to accessorize. She didn't teach me how to plan. She didn't teach me how to budget or anything like that. If I said, "Ma, I went to the store and I like these shoes, but it comes in black, white, and tan. What should I get?" She'd say, "Get all three of them." That was
Yeah.
my mother's
And
solution to everything.
She did that with houses.
Yeah. She just bought whatever she liked. She didn't say, "Well, what could you afford?" I wish I had a little Jewish influence. Maybe if she was fooling around so much, she should have fooled around with a Jew. At least I would have learned how to budget my
I
money.
don't know that there was any Jews, but Jimmy
it's all
Roselli,
true.
I think, is a candidate, and
Well,
we know about a few other ones.
the
And the guy,
Italian lifestyle back then, when they say stereotypically Italians are gangsters, you know why they say that? Because it's true. Back then, that was what, with their limited education, what they were, had accessible to them. That was a way of making a decent living without having education. You didn't need an education. You just knew how to count. My mother stopped writing notes to, like, say, the electrician when I think I was in second grade. She couldn't spell. So I had to write, "Dear Con Ed, please come to a basement, blah, blah, blah." My mother couldn't spell please. She couldn't spell come, I used to say to the strippers when they said they had to go to the bank, "But you can't even spell ATM." You know what I mean? And like that, my mother couldn't spell or write, so I started doing that from a very young age, which I think is why I got so, not dominant in the sense of being bossy, but involved, because I had to handle a lot as a kid. I had a younger sister, she was oblivious to the world, but my mother
Still
made
is.
Yeah, my
Still
mother
is.
made me in charge of a lot of things. And then she got mad when I would question things, which looking back, I have to laugh because you really don't have a right to do that as a child, but I did because she didn't handle things too well. She was so dishonest, and you never got the true story. You never knew the true story. When you went to her and said, for an example, "Ma, did you sleep with the man that fooled around with your sister and she had the child with?" Because she was very straight, and she didn't do that often. My mother was a big butana, they called back then, fooling around with everybody. My mother was beautiful. I think that I can't blame her much because she was so beautiful that she had so much opportunity falling at her feet and in her lap that she took advantage of it, which is like a man that wants to have sex with girls. Men that don't have sex with a lot of women, it's because they can't, because nobody wants them. If they have the opportunity, they'll do it. You know what I'm saying? So my mother was so beautiful, and in all the press articles that we have, they always refer to her as
Oh, here we go.
mini-clad, raven-haired beauty.
That's hard
And
to
she
say
was.
3 times.
Yeah. But she was absolutely beautiful. She knew it. She had no freedom growing up because she was the youngest of 10, and the older brothers and sisters were kind of, strict and didn't let her have any life. So she sure as hell made up for it when she got older and got
Yeah, but
married.
do you know how
After
she
she
got
married.
that no-show job that we're going to show on the Monitor? Do you know how she got that?
No.
She met a guy called John Hanley, who was J.V. Kenny's grandson. The J.V. Kenny administration was
Corrupt.
in
isn't
Hudson
it?
County, corrupt
Hudson
for
County
50
is known
years.
for corruption, by
50
the way.
years.
Yes,
Well, this was his grandson. She met him in Roy's
at a fundraiser,
at a fundraiser.
selling raffles, I remember.
She had a red dress on, and of course she was gorgeous. He fell in love with her immediately, well, lust for love. 2 months later, not even, I suspected something was not right. She's got money, and where is it coming from? I had an idea. Anyway, I found pay stubs. I said,
For a
well,
job
I
that
approached
she
her.
never went to, by
Right,
the way.
I
It was
approached
called
her.
a no-show job.
yeah, she got paid every 2 weeks. I forget exactly
We
how much
have
it was.
newspaper articles to document what we're saying, that we're not just imagining this, because it was a big ongoing.
Trial.
Yeah, Hanley is the man's name. That
There
was
we
the
go.
man that hired her and had her on the payroll for a while, maybe 6 months or something, for what was referred to as a no-show job, which is ultimately what she wound up going to jail for, right?
Well, she had to go. They had a trial with the jury. He was fighting it because there was a lot of money in the family. He says he lived in Scarsdale. I don't know where he lived, but I know she got a check every 2 weeks.
For a job that she had never not only performed a service, she had never even been in the hospital, which is funny, when you look back at the story.
I talked to her about that.
Because I remember her saying to me, they told me, don't worry, that they're not going to ask any questions. They asked her a million questions. What color are the passes? What is the ladies' room
What
look
are you talking
like?
about?
She didn't know anything.
She didn't even know where the ladies' room was.
She didn't know anything.
Never in the.
Which is dumb. I don't know why she
No,
trusted them. She trusted them.
Well,
she believed them, that they were not going
I said
to
to
ask
her,
her.
what was your title? She said secretary. I said, secretary? You got to be kidding. You're a 7th grade dropout.
And she couldn't
you
spell
you
the.
can't spell cat.
Yeah.
You're going to tell me you were a secretary. It was a no-show job. And I said, Barky's in with it, Patsy, Chorfy.
Yeah.
She named everybody. She said, yeah, but we got a problem. We have to go to court. They know about it. There's going to be problems. So I had a big meeting in Chorfy's bakery. And she was briefed. They didn't
On
tell
what to
They
say.
didn't tell her where the ladies' room was.
Not only that, why would you not take it upon yourself to
Acquaint yourself. Acquaint
what they
yourself.
call CMA, cover my ass, and go there and just know? Because if they should ask you, wouldn't it be a good idea to have that information? If you don't use it, you don't use it.
Well, you
right?
know why she was worried? She had 3 priors, but there were no convictions yet. 3 gambling cases where she got caught and taken action on all
Right.
3, and this no-show job showed up, which is
Which-
fraud.
If they want to get you and they can't get you on what they want to get you on, they'll get you on. It's like tax
Of course.
evasion. When they wanted to get the gangsters or the criminals, whatever you want to call them, years ago, if they couldn't catch them in the act of a criminal act, they could get them on tax evasion as something that was a charge they could prove to put them in jail, because they couldn't get them in jail for things they couldn't. You had to have proof. You can't just say, oh, I know you take numbers. Now, this is one of the press articles, Hanley trial starts today. It went on for months.
6
and,
months.
Yeah, and he did wind up going to jail, the man that hired her. And the reason I find this interesting is because this is the kind of stuff that existed in those days that would never, ever, ever happen today. I mean, they could never do that today. There's too much.
She threw everybody under the
backup,
bus, including John
files.
Hanley. She threw them all under the bus.
Yeah.
She admitted in court that she was a no-show job.
And she said he told her what to say. Like, in other words,
Yeah.
she went as far, but when she threw him under the bus, as saying, and he told me what to say when you ask me these questions, which honestly she didn't know the answers to, but he briefed her, is what they called it in the press.
Yeah, but she didn't know where the ladies' room was.
Yeah.
When she told me she was going against, I said, it was the prosecutor. She said, Ray Brown. Oh. I
Yeah, he
said,
was known.
you're in trouble. He was most prominent attorney and defense lawyer, or best attorney there was, right? And Eddie Zampella. Those
Yeah,
two.
Zampella was famous.
She had Zampella on another trial in Fairview, which was not a good place for me because I was told to stay out of there. When she beat the Go-Go girl up, almost knocked her eye out.
That girl
Trudy.
I remember that, yeah.
Yeah. How about the 100-mile-an-hour chase from Jersey City through Bayonne? Me and one caddy, her and the